parents, relatives, friends, guests, fellow faculty, and graduates of the class of 2024. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Stanford University's 133rd commencement exercises and the diploma ceremony in the program of international relations. And for those of you who are fathers out there, I want to wish you a happy Father's Day. I'm sure I don't have to tell you, your children are giving you one of the best gifts you can receive today. That is the end to tuition payments. So congrats, fathers. So I'm Ken Schultz. I'm the William Bennett Monroe Professor of Political Science, and I'm the faculty director of the program in international relations. And I'm delighted to be joined on the stage today by faculty who teach and advise in the IR program. I'm just going to introduce and acknowledge them there. Yasmina Boych, lecturer in international relations. Britton Heller, lecturer in international relations. Bert Pattenoud, lecturer in international relations. Robert Rakove, lecturer in international relations. Steve Stedman, senior fellow at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies. Aiko Takeuchi, the Liu Dang lecturer in undergraduate teaching in international relations. And we have the presence of Mike McFall, the director of the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies. And since international relations is an interdisciplinary program, many of the faculty who played a key role in teaching and advising our graduates are scattered across campus today in similar ceremonies being held by the departments of political science and history and economics and sociology and many more. We also owe a great deal to countless foreign language instructors as well as faculty at overseas campuses. These links across disciplines, across campus, across the world are what gives the international relations program its vitality and its diversity. So let me say a few things about the class of 2024. So we have 72 majors and 10 minors in this class. This is a relatively large number of degree recipients for us, and it is good news. Although often the number of IR majors fluctuates with how good or bad things are happening in the world, and the numbers tend to be highest when things are bad, so here you go. Now, they are themselves an international group. They come from 13 different countries. As you see on the program, there's a very impressive list of languages that they have demonstrated proficiency in: Arabic, Chinese, Farsi, French, German, Hebrew, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Mandarin, Norwegian, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, Swahili, Tigrinya, Turkish, and Ukrainian. And they have studied abroad on every continent except for Antarctica. And I say that every year and keep hoping somebody will try Antarctica sometime. But they've gone to places, Amman, Australia, Beijing, Berlin, Cape Town, Florence, Hong Kong, Istanbul, Kyoto, Madrid, Meknes, that's in Morocco, I had to look that up, Oxford, Paris, Santiago, Taipei, and Tangier. 18 of them are receiving honors for doing a thesis in either international relations program or one of the interdisciplinary honors programs. And their theses cover a variety of really pressing topics, ranging from the prosecution of sexual and gender-based crimes by the International Criminal Court, policies affecting immigration and migrants' welfare, and competition between the United States and China on a variety of issues, from artificial intelligence to nuclear weapons to rare earth minerals. So we're proud of all of them and their accomplishments. Now, while this is a celebratory occasion, I feel we should acknowledge that it has been a difficult year. Events in the Middle East reverberated here on campus and kindled strong emotions. Some in our community have family or friends in Israel-Palestine, or they have strong attachments to the region. Or even without those ties, it was hard as a human not to be distressed at the violence and bloodshed of October 7th and the war that followed. Long-standing wounds were violently pulled apart in ways that could pull us apart. And this is an important reminder that the things that we study in international relations are not abstractions, but real events that touch real lives, both here and far. Now, in my capacity as IR director and a faculty member, though, I want to say I've also seen another aspect of this, one that hasn't been as widely reported in the press. I've seen curious students seeking out knowledge about a conflict that has deep and complex roots, talking to one another about difficult topics, listening to speakers curiously and asking probing questions. I and my colleagues have had many conversations with students in office hours about how they were feeling or what they were curious about or how they could process these events. I've been in touch with faculty both here and elsewhere who have thought hard about how to teach these issues in ways that promote learning. So these are the kinds of things that don't make the evening news, but they're very much a part of how an intellectual community like Stanford University, like the IR program, comes together to process difficult events. To get through these kinds of challenging times, it's important to fall back on your core values. Now, as you'll see when we read the bios of our graduates, every IR student plots their own path through our major, but there are certain bedrock values that guide all of us. The value of engaging with the world outside our borders, the value of learning the language, history, and culture of other countries, the value of experiencing life from a different point of view, and the value of asking difficult questions and using logic and evidence to evaluate the quality of different arguments. That's why we ask you to demonstrate proficiency in a language other than English. That's why we require you to live overseas for at least a quarter, to experience another country as more than a tourist. These were more than just requirements to tick off on the path to a degree, but experiences that permit meaningful and thoughtful engagement with a complex world. Now, none of this means that change or peace will be easy to bring about. They are not. On the engineering side of campus, I think sometimes there's a view that the more you study an issue, the more likely you are to find a solution. I think over here, we often find that the more you study a problem, the more daunting it appears. There are often difficult conflicts in the world that defy resolution. What I'm confident about, though, is that in the graduates of the class of 2024, we are sending out into the world good people with the right skills, experiences, and values. They will each find their own way to contribute in some measure, even in ways that don't show up in the news. And the IR program is and will be proud to call them our students, just as you are all proud of the accomplishments that have brought us here today. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say. You don't have to hear from me anymore. Thanks. Because I want you to hear from our students. We're delighted to have two student speakers from the class of 2024. Our first speaker is Catarina Buchatskiy, who is from Kyiv, Ukraine. She learned Portuguese, Ukrainian, and French, studied abroad in Paris, and minored in military history. She was a co-founder of the Stanford Ukrainian Support Alliance, a research assistant at the Hoover Institution, an intern at the International Center for Defense and Security in Estonia. Catarina plans to return to Kyiv and pursue a career in defense technology and intelligence. Catarina.
My name is Catarina Buchatskiy, and it is my honor and privilege to be speaking before you today at Stanford's Class of 2024 International Relations Commencement Ceremony, a department I hold dear to my heart and one which has profoundly shaped the person I am today. Last summer, I was home in Kyiv doing a military training alongside some Ukrainian soldiers when one morning, one of them walked in wearing a Stanford t-shirt. I told him I went to school there, and he asked, "Didn't they teach you to do anything better at university than to go to war?" When the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started over 2 years ago, I took a leave of absence from Stanford to help volunteer with the war effort. I didn't know when I would come back from school, and to be honest, I didn't know if I wanted to. On February 24th, in an instant, the theories of international relations that I had spent years meticulously studying felt painfully obsolete in the face of the tragedy that had hit my home country. Realpolitik or neoliberalism or the other number of intricate explanations of why the world worked this way were not good enough answers for me as to why war had come to us, and these theories felt like even more painfully inadequate tools in fixing it. Over the last few years of our studies here at Stanford, I'm sure many of you have grappled with what it means to be a student of IR in an environment in which our global institutions and delicately balanced international systems are failing us. Often, when I go home to Ukraine and tell people what I'm studying, they ask me, why did you fail? As a student of international relations and a deeply optimistic person, I came into this field because of my unwavering conviction in the indomitable human spirit and the power that we, as individuals, hold over the seemingly dauntless and unforgiving course of history. And despite it all, I do remain a deeply optimistic person, as I think deep down all of us are. Optimism is our only choice, because a shrug of resignation means acceptance of the status quo, and the status quo is simply unacceptable. A shrug of resignation means relinquishing our agency, conceding defeat in the face of adversity, and abandoning the belief that positive change is not only possible, but imperative. I am not ready to concede this defeat quite yet. When the full-scale invasion began, I was completely paralyzed. I couldn't get up, I couldn't eat. I couldn't tear myself away from the endless minute-by-minute updates of what I thought were going to be my country's final days. My best friend Davina, who's graduating with me here today, stood outside of the door one afternoon while I showered, holding my phone and reading the updates out loud to me so that I could pull myself together for even just a minute. My advisor, Dr. Amy Ziegert, showed up at the doorstep of my dorm with a backpack full of supplies, such as a first aid kit and solar-powered phone chargers to help me prepare for my trip back to Ukraine, and helped me raise money to protect protective equipment to evacuate our artworks from museums in the line of fire. Professor McFall told me one evening that before he goes to bed every night, he wonders if he's done enough to help Ukraine. When these systems have failed us, individuals have stood up every step of the way. These moments with these people are just some of the reasons why I'm not ready to lose faith just yet, and some of the reasons that I came back to Stanford, and the fact that I promised my parents I would. Happy Father's Day, Dad. These last 2 years have been the most difficult of my life, and I've been given every reason to believe that the forces of evil are mightier than those of good. But I don't. But I do want to make one thing abundantly clear. If I've learned anything about international relations, it's that optimism is absolutely imperative, and that optimism isn't enough. There's no use in simply believing that someday some people are going to make it all better because the world is fundamentally good. No one is coming to save us but ourselves. If you believe in the inevitable victory of good, fight for it. And if you don't, fight for it anyway, because it is a very sad thing to believe we are destined to fail without at least putting up a fight. Professor McFall told me that when he thinks about whether he's done enough each night, almost always the answer is no. And often, too often, we will feel the same. And yet, even when the answer is no, or especially when the answer is no, we have to get up the next morning and do it all over again, not to chase the day when we can go to bed at night with our consciences clear, but because the price we pay if we stop is higher than we can ever imagine. I don't know where that soldier is that I met at training, but there are so many things I wish I could tell him. Perhaps one thing would be that they did teach me better than to go to war, but war came to me, and when that happens, I was taught better than to bow down and abandon the fight. Can we live in a conflict-free world? I don't know. But to the graduating class of 2024, I ask that you not only remain unwavering in your conviction that light will shine over darkness, but that you will do everything in your power to ensure it. Let us move forward with patience, perseverance, and a determination that peace, a true peace, a peace in which good wins, is worth continuing to fight for, even if we failed before. Slava Ukraini. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catarina. Our second speaker is Ava Griscom Ford. Ava learned Spanish, Mandarin, and French, and studied abroad in Paris. She graduated with distinction in Phi Beta Kappa. She was a Stanford Women in Business Vice President, a Chief of Staff intern at Smarter DX and Unison, and a Mayfield Fellow. Ava plans to pursue a career in technology. Ava? Sure. Quite tall. Yeah, that's fine.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Should I raise it? Okay. It's okay also if not. I can just, okay.
we have
Sorry about that, thank you. Quite tall. Thank you so much. When I was a child, I would wake with the sun and write. I filled dozens of composition notebooks with stories about the wonder of small moments, scraps of cardboard and discarded fruit peels, mists crawling belly down across green fields, couples choosing lemons at a grocery store. I wrote story after story about ordinary people doing ordinary things. Even then, I believed somewhere in these modest moments lay the mysteries of being, that this smallness too could be aliveness. I watched the world, however ordinary, with a sense of wonder. As a child, this curiosity was part of my blood and bones. Questions slipped in and out of me messily with ease. Children have not yet learned the heavy pact of precedent. They are not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions, to champion their confusion. They are not afraid to ask the name of the person next to them on the bus or spend hours staring at the sunlight coming in through the slats of the window. Without the precedent of the past informing our moral epistemology of where to spend our time, all things small are made grand, and in the innocence of childhood, there are universes to be discovered in uncertainty. As we grow, however, we quickly uncover the importance of learned knowledge. Somewhere along the way, we begin to spend less time asking questions and more time answering them. For many of us here today, the objects of our attention got bigger: global warming, famine, world peace, and our specializations got smaller: security, economic development, law. The capacity to learn and subsequently leverage that knowledge brought us far. It brought us here to Stanford, where we continue to push the boundaries of our own understanding. And while this certain, provable knowledge is indispensable, I still believe that our world owes its wisdom to wonder, to this uncertain, never promised, pulsating space of potential. If our institutional knowledge is sturdy and solid, wonder is the shaky ladder leading to the heavens, the bravery in the blur. It allows us to remain oriented toward understanding because it reminds us that the process is never finished. As scholars of international relations, this orientation is critical. Curiosity is the commencement of compassion, enabling us to connect with people and places we might not fully understand. It empowers us to move beyond the confines of our accredited institutions and specializations, urging us to follow instead our wonder about humanity. As students in this field, we have the unique privilege of being at the heart of a discipline whose core purpose is making the world a better place. But we must never forget to remember who we are making the world a better place for. This is the power of marvel. It keeps us suspended in delicious discovery, turning toward one another and asking each other stories, keeping us attentive and listening. But how can we justify this descent into the quiet? How do we defend taking time to contemplate and revel in the sacredness of the small and unknown when the world is aflame around us? This commitment to childlike curiosity might seem frivolous or irresponsible, and I admit I understand the objection. We are living in dangerous and divided times, the personal pain and persistence of which I have learned not from textbooks, but through the voices, stories, and actions of the class of 2024. I cannot claim to understand the battles this esteemed group before you has faced. However, this is precisely when the power of not knowing serves its purpose. We might never fully comprehend one another's experiences or the lives of communities across the globe, and that is okay. Not knowing allows us to show up with solidarity, to engage in discussions with open minds and without answers. It lets curiosity guide us, so that what I can offer you today is not a structured solution to the challenges my peers are working to eradicate, but a personal testament to the profound influence of their stories, the motivation they instill, and the optimism they embody if you are willing to wonder about them and begin the conversation. It can be easy for us as canonical scholars to forget that great progress has always been born from curiosity in uncertainty. Our world's most significant advancements have stemmed from leaders in their own dangerous and divided times who, like you all, chose to question rather than accept. As Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote in his book, The American Scholar, meek young men grow up in libraries, believing it their duty to accept the views which Cicero, Locke, and Bacon have given, forgetful that Cicero, Locke, and Bacon were only young men in libraries when they wrote those books. At Stanford, we have cultivated this curiosity and courage to question. By never taking the status quo for granted, we will pave the way for improvements that once seemed impossible. In a time of devastating certainty, we as scholars can choose uncertainty as a path forward. We can choose wonder. So pay attention. Allow yourself to be thrown by the night sky or cracked open by the face of a stranger on the subway. Reconnect with the magic of ordinary humanity, which is at the heart of the world we are all aiming to improve. And in this orientation toward uncertainty, may we be oblivious to the false comforts of absolutes. May we walk with wonder and keep company with confusion, and may we be forever unyielding in the pursuit of clarity that is never singular, never promised, but despite the perils of the journey, always worth the marvels along the way. For those of you who have always been wide-eyed with wonder, I leave you with the words of Henry David Thoreau. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put foundations under them. But if you are unsure how to reawaken that childlike innocence that allows us to see the world with an open heart and mind, I leave you instead with this. Imagine your 5 or 6-year-old self looking up at you in awe of the regalia you wear today. Ask them to join you in a quiet walk and to read from the pages of the notebook they have clutched in their arms. Let them take your hand and lead the way. They will know what to do. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're now going to turn to the main event, which is the awarding of the diplomas. As I pass out the diplomas, here to read the names and to tell you a little bit about each of our graduates are 2 very important members of our program. Robert Rakove, who's lecturer in international relations. He teaches a number of core courses in history and American foreign policy. And Britton Heller, a lecturer in international relations, who teaches classes on international law. As their names are read, the students are going to come up, they're going to receive their diploma, and then stand with me for a photo opportunity. I should add that when you open up your diploma case and find it empty, that's because you didn't finish the final assignment in my class. Actually, it's because Stanford is now mailing diplomas to you, so the case is purely ceremonial. Okay, Rob.
Sankai Matthew Shia is from London, United Kingdom. He specialized in international security, learned Mandarin, was an IR peer advisor, and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. He was a United States delegate to the G7 Youth Summit for Climate and Energy Policy, and while studying at Stanford and Washington, was a policy fellow in the U.S. Department of Transportation, Office of Secretary Pete Buttigieg. His most memorable moment was a one-on-one chat with the Australian ambassador and former Prime Minister, Dr. Kevin Rudd. Sankai will intern with the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, then serve on the Biden campaign's policy team. Afterward, he will complete a coterminal master's in mechanical engineering, after which he plans to attend law or business school. Irina Alexeyeva is from Plano, Texas. She specialized in comparative international governance and international history and culture, learned Russian and French, studied abroad in Paris, and double majored in philosophy. Irina did varsity women's gymnastics and plans to pursue law school and creative writing. Michael Aliski is from Aurora, Colorado. He specialized in comparative international governance, learned Chinese, Russian, and Spanish, studied abroad in Beijing and Prague, and minored in computer science. He graduated with distinction and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. He was vice president of the Debate Society and Forum for American Chinese Exchange at Stanford, research assistant for Professor McFall, and a Stanford Daily writer. Most memorable for him was biking out of his last first-year final exam, knowing that he had just reached a major Stanford milestone. Michael will complete his coterminal master's in international policy and plans to pursue a PhD in political science or a job traveling the world. Jacob Anderson is from Barcelona, Spain. He specialized in international security and international history and culture, learned Spanish, studied abroad at Oxford, was a Ravenswood Reed's tutor, and minored in global studies. Most memorable was experiencing another culture and studying Victorian literature at Oxford. Jacob plans to teach Asian children and travel on the side. Isabella Arrigo is from Paris, France. She specialized in economic development, world economy, and international history and culture, and studied in Washington, D.C. She was a member of Stanford Women in Business and the Stanford Polo Team. Isabella is pursuing a coterminal master's degree in Earth Systems. Sévien Aubuchon is from Vancouver, Canada. He specialized in Europe and Russia and comparative international governance, learned French, Spanish, and Arabic, studied abroad in Paris and Santiago, and minored in linguistics. Most memorable was hiking in Patagonia while studying abroad. Sévien plans to pursue a career in the Foreign Service. Marco Baeza is from Hemet, California. He specialized in international security and international history and culture, learned Spanish and Arabic, studied abroad in Madrid, and minored in art history. He was a Hoover Institution research assistant, Muay Thai athlete, and Chi Alpha Christian Fellowship member. Marco will complete his coterminal master's in international policy and plans to work as a United States military officer. Jacqueline Basara is from McMinnville, Tennessee. She specialized in Latin American and Iberian studies and Middle East and Central Asia, learned Arabic, French, and Portuguese, and studied abroad in Morocco. She won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and an Arabic Critical Language Scholarship. She was a student coordinator for the Leland Scholars Program, financial manager for the Enchanted Broccoli Forest Co-op, social chair for the Stanford Shakespeare Theater Company, and academic chair for Hermanas. Jacqueline plans to pursue a master's in library sciences before heading to law school. Isabel Bloom is from New York, New York. She specialized in economic development, world economy, and international security, studied abroad in Madrid, learned Spanish, minored in data science, and graduated with IR honors. She interned at an immigration tech startup and a software-focused private equity firm on a Stanford Latinos Entrepreneurship Fellowship. Most memorable was Professor McFall's guest lecture in Professor Stoner's Democracy Development and the Rule of Law class. Isabel plans to work at Jefferies in the Leveraged Finance Group in New York as an investment banking analyst. Laura Bosek is from Martinez, California. She specialized in international security and East and South Asia, learned Chinese, Russian, and Spanish, studied away in Hong Kong and New York, and received a Boren Scholarship. She played Stanford women's rugby, was English editor of the U.S.-China Journal, and interned at a Latvia startup, In-Q-Tel. Most memorable was taking classes with Department of Justice lawyers, lobbyists, and policymakers at Stanford and Washington. Laura will complete a coterminal master's in computer science and plans to work in the semiconductor industry in Taiwan while continuing her Mandarin studies. Kate Bradley is from Hong Kong, China. She specialized in East and South Asia and economic development, world economy, learned Chinese, studied abroad at Oxford, double majored, and completed a coterminal master's in Earth Systems, earned IR honors, and won a 2024 Rhodes Scholarship. She was a Pre-Corps Energy Institute student advisor, Hoover National Security Affairs Fellows Mentorship Program participant, and Planetary Science Journal Club member. Most memorable was a 3-week group Patagonia experience with Earth Science professor Rob Dunbar. Kate plans to read economic history as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford. Nora Elizabeth Brew is from Portola Valley, California. She specialized in international history and culture and Latin American and Iberian studies, learned Spanish and Portuguese, studied abroad in Madrid, and minored in economics. She was a Hoover Institute Research Fellow, undergraduate student advisory board leader, and NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence intern in Estonia. Most memorable were starting college online, studying abroad, and interning in Estonia. Nora plans to work in government and public service, consulting at Deloitte. Yeah. Catarina Natalie Buchatskiy is from Kyiv, Ukraine. She specialized in international security and Europe and Russia, learned Portuguese, Ukrainian, and French, studied abroad in Paris, and minored in military history. She was co-founder of the Ukrainian Support Alliance at Stanford, research assistant at the Hoover Institution, and intern at the International Center for Defense and Security in Estonia. Catarina plans to return to Kyiv and pursue a career in defense technology and intelligence. Emma Boudet is from Charlevoix, Michigan. She specialized in environment, energy, and natural resources and international security, learned French, studied abroad in Paris, and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was co-president of Stanford Democrats, Haas Center Cardinal Quarter Peer Advisor, and Stanford Votes Director of Civic Engagement. Most memorable was participating in the 26.2 Stanford to the Sea hike from Jasper Ridge to the San Gregorio State Beach. Emma will complete her co-terminal master's in sustainability science and practice and plans to intern at a climate tech startup working to further carbon sequestration. Isa Calero Forero is from Quito, Ecuador. They specialized in social development and human well-being in Africa, learned Portuguese, Spanish, and French, studied abroad in South Korea, completed a coterminal master's in Latin American studies, and graduated with IR honors. They were admitted to the National Portuguese Honor Society, won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, and an IR Honors Program Thesis Prize. They were co-founder of Latin American Politics, Community Engagement Coordinator at the Women's Community Center, and a member of Stanford's Salsa Performance Team. Most memorable was creating Latin American Politics, which organizes student conferences about politics in Latin America. Isa will study abroad in Kenya this summer and plans to pursue grassroots human rights work to bring about greater protections against violations. Madeline Kasich is from Parker, Colorado. She specialized in comparative international governance and social development and human well-being, learned Arabic and Spanish, and studied abroad in Jordan. She was a United Nations Association Film Festival coordinator, member of Stanford Women in Politics, and Political Psychology Research Group assistant. She won the Program in Writing and Rhetoric 2024 Hofer Prize and 2020 Booth Prize. Most memorable were learning Arabic, attending the Arab Film Festival in San Francisco, and studying abroad in Jordan. Madeline plans to pursue a career as a Foreign Service officer. Priscilla Chen Su is from Chino Hills, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being and comparative international governance, studied abroad in Madrid, learned Spanish, and double majored in Spanish. She interned at J.P. Morgan and the LA Public Defender's Office. Priscilla plans to pursue a law career. Tianyi Joyce Chen is from Nanjing, China. She specialized in international history and culture and East and South Asia, studied abroad at Oxford, studied German and Norwegian, and minored in digital humanities. She won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and is graduating with distinction. She was a research assistant at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies, student researcher for Stanford's Law and Policy Lab, staff editor for the Stanford Technology Law Review, and research intern for Stanford's Center for Spatial and Textual Analysis. Most memorable was studying abroad and her many research experiences. Tianyi will work as a business analyst at McKinsey. Graham Chernick is from Southlake, Texas. He specialized in international security and international history and culture, learned French, Chinese, and Spanish, studied abroad in Taipei, and is graduating with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. He served as TA for Dr. Heller's international law course and was a member of Stanford's Navy ROTC program. Graham completed a coterminal master's in sociology and is graduating as second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps. Isabel Rose Coloma is from Walnut Creek, California. She specialized in comparative international governance and international security, learned Mandarin and Arabic, studied abroad in Hong Kong, minored in translation studies, graduated with interdisciplinary honors in democracy development and the rule of law, and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was research fellow for the King Papers Project and Stanford Law School's Center for Racial Justice. Most memorable was studying abroad in Hong Kong, where she witnessed their distinct approach to managing the pandemic and contested forms of political expression. Isabel will complete a coterminal master's in international comparative education and plans to pursue a career in the Foreign Service or an international education NGO. Katie Dye is from Cupertino, California. She specialized in East and South Asia and social development and human well-being, learned Mandarin and Japanese, studied abroad in Kyoto, and minored in modern languages. She interned at the Stanford Law School's Center for Racial Justice, was research assistant to Professor Michael McFall, and session facilitator for Professor Yoshiko Matsumoto's Sharing Conversations project. Most memorable was studying in Kyoto and improving her Japanese. Katie plans to get her PhD in East Asian Studies and then pursue a career in public defense. Lee Duan is from Longmeadow, Massachusetts. He specialized in international history and culture and international security and learned Korean. He was Stanford Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Club president, ZS Associates strategy intern, and a location camp business manager. Most memorable was attending concerts and events with friends during senior year. Lee plans to pursue business and get an MBA. Irmak Ersoz is from Istanbul, Turkey. She specialized in social development and human well-being and comparative international governance, learned French, Turkish, and Arabic, minored in data science and art practice, and graduated with IR honors. She interned at the Permanent Mission of Turkey to the UN and Accountability Council, participated in the Haas Community Engaged Scholar Program, and presented at the King Center Global Development Conference. She won the Oral Communication Program's Award for Excellence in Honors Thesis Presentation. Irmak hopes to attend law school. Elise Feitzinger is from Palo Alto, California. She specialized in international security and Latin American and Iberian studies, learned Spanish, studied abroad in Madrid, and completed a coterminal master's in international policy. She interned with the World Justice Project in DC, was a Hume Center writing tutor, and Hoover Institute research assistant. She graduated with distinction and Phi Beta Kappa. Most memorable was driving up to Bend, Oregon during online classes to live with a group of new Stanford frosh. Elise will work as an analyst at Cornerstone Research. Davina Field Marsham is from Toronto, Canada. She specialized in social development and human well-being and comparative international governance, learned French, and studied abroad in Paris. She was a Hume Center tutor and on the Stanford Fashion X leadership team. She graduated with distinction and Phi Beta Kappa. Davina plans to work as a management consultant for the Boston Consulting Group. Ava Griscom Ford is from New York, New York. She specialized in international history and culture and international security, learned Spanish, Mandarin, and French, and studied abroad in Paris. She graduated with distinction and Phi Beta Kappa. She was Stanford Women in Business Vice President, Chief of Staff Intern at Smarter DX and Unison, and a Mayfield Fellow, which was her most memorable experience. Ava plans to pursue a career in technology. Hannah Marie Freeman is from Manchester, Massachusetts. She specialized in international security in East and South Asia, learned Chinese and French, and graduated with IR honors. She was captain and All-American on the Stanford women's sailing team and interned with the U.S. State Department. Most memorable was the Hoover National Security Affairs Fellows Mentorship Program, where she connected with inspiring people and learned that she wanted to pursue a career in international security. Mary Haile Selassie Gabra Selassie is from Asmara, Eritrea, and Kansas City, Missouri. She specialized in social development and human well-being in international history and culture, and learned Tigrinya and Italian. She was an advising fellow with Matriculate, lab assistant manager at the Pacific Free Clinic, cardiology clinic manager at Arbor, and mental and emotional support advocate with Hearts for Homeless. Most memorable was taking introductory horsemanship and fulfilling her lifelong dream of riding. Mary will complete a coterminal master's in public policy and plans to go to medical school to become a surgeon. Leonardo Glickbarg is from Santa Barbara, California. He specialized in international security and comparative international governance, studied abroad in Madrid, and minored in Spanish. He was a member of the Society for International Affairs at Stanford, the Stanford Space Initiative, and the Stanford Daily. Leo will complete a coterminal master's in computer science and work on AI policy research at RAND. Sonia Marie Guggens is from Chula Vista, California. She specialized in international history and culture and social development and human well-being, learned Spanish, French, and Italian, studied abroad in Florence, minored in human biology, and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was a Stanford Sexual Health Peer Resource Center co-manager, AmeriCorps member, and Women's Community Center Collective Liberation intern. Most memorable was waking up every day to an early alarm and experiencing the glow of sunrise over Stanford's campus. Sonia plans to pursue a master's degree in human rights and humanitarian action at Sciences Po in Paris. Sydney Guthrie is from Petersburg, Alaska. She specialized in environment, energy, and natural resources and social development and human well-being, learned Mandarin, and studied abroad in Hong Kong. She was a BOSP, student ambassador, and interned with environmental policy in California and the Bill Lane Center for the American West. Most memorable was meeting amazing people and gaining an international worldview while studying abroad in Hong Kong. Sydney plans to pursue climate equity work. All right. Max Alexander Hempel is from Redondo Beach, California. He specialized in international history and culture and Europe and Russia, learned French, German, and Spanish, studied abroad in Paris, and minored in economics. He was a research assistant at the Graduate School of Education and a data science and innovation intern with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. Max plans to pursue a career in international business. Clem Harrington is from Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. They specialized in international security and social development. Sir? Not here. Okay. Benjamin Elijah Harris is from Birmingham, Alabama. He specialized in East and South Asia and international security, learned Mandarin, Spanish, and German, and studied abroad in Berlin. He was a summer research college participant and interned at a climate policy think tank in Taiwan. Benjamin plans to complete his coterminal master's in history. I thoroughly endorse this. Yvonne Hong is from Ningbo, China. She specialized in comparative international governance, learned German, studied in Berlin, double majored in product design, co-termed in computer science, and graduated with distinction. She was vice president of the Business Association of Stanford Entrepreneurial Students, research assistant at RegLab, and associate project manager at Salesforce. Most memorable were a directed reading with Dr. Gili Vardi and a 24-hour birthday party to celebrate memories with Stanford friends. Yvonne plans to work as an associate product manager at Google. Lauren Howe is from San Mateo, California. She specialized in economic development, world economy and environment, energy and natural resources, learned Italian, studied abroad in Florence, and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She won a national championship as a member of the varsity lightweight rowing team and was vice chair of communications for Stanford and government. Lauren plans to pursue a career in public service.
Nina Sylvia Iskandarsa is from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She specialized in international security and Middle East and Central Asia, learned Arabic, Hebrew, and Swahili, and studied abroad in Jordan and Ghana. She graduated with distinction, Phi Beta Kappa, and IR honors. She won the Hoover Distinguished Undergraduate Essay Competition and the IR Honors Program Thesis Prize. She was a Ghana Center for Democratic Development Research Fellow and interned at the U.S. State Department Yemen Affairs Unit and the USAID Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance. Nina plans to work at the U.S. Department of Justice. Charles Sinatra Kogan is from Los Angeles, California. He specialized in international security and international history and culture, learned Russian and Italian, studied abroad in Italy, was a Lunsford honoree, and graduated with IR honors. He was a member of an a cappella group and the Jewish Student Association. Most memorable was studying in Florence and learning about himself and how to be a better world citizen. Charles plans to pursue a career in entertainment in Los Angeles. Sophia Esther Lamas is from Evergreen, Oregon. She specialized in Middle East and Central Asia and comparative international governance, learned Arabic, Spanish, and Norwegian, and studied at Oxford. She was vice president and secretary for the Questbridge Low-Income Student Group, the program director / captain and mentor of the Stanford International Mentors at Bechtel, and interned through the U.S. Foreign Service Internship Program. She received the U.S. Department of State Meritorious Honor Award, the Cardinal Quarterly Spirituality and Social Change Scholar with Cardinal Service, and is graduating with distinction. Most memorable moment was completing a directed reading with Professor Salam, where she focused on U.S.-Egyptian relations during the 1970s. Sophia will pursue a master's in Middle East Studies at George Washington University. J.B. Jongbom Lim is from Seoul, South Korea. He specialized in international security and East and South Asian studies, learned Chinese, double majored in mathematical and computational science, and graduated with MSc honors and interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. He served in the Republic of Korea Army and received the National Intelligence Service Award and the Major General Award for Excellence in Leadership. He was a research assistant with the Stanford Next Asia Policy Lab and Stanford Artificial Intelligence Lab, played intramural soccer, and interned at Samsung and Salesforce. JB will complete a coterminal master's in computer science and plans to pursue a PhD in political science. Marianne Liu is from Palo Alto, California, and Beijing, China. She specialized in international history and culture and East and South Asia, studied at Oxford, learned Mandarin, was an IR peer advisor, and graduated with interdisciplinary honors in international security studies. She graduated with distinction and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and a William J. Perry CSAC Thesis Award. She was an active member of the Forum for American-Chinese Exchange at Stanford and played on the club tennis team. Most memorable were adventures with friends, interesting classes, and studying at Oxford. Marianne plans to work at the intersection of technology and US-China relations. Anna McNulty is from New York, New York. She specialized in environment, energy, and natural resources, learned Spanish, studied in Madrid, was an IR peer advisor, and minored in digital humanities. She graduated with distinction and Phi Beta Kappa and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, the Stanford Steve Steinberg Reporting Award, and a Fulbright Fellowship. She was a Stanford Daily Climate Beat reporter, editorial intern at the Bill Lane Center and The West magazine, and a winning writing GSB course assistant. Most memorable was studying in Madrid, where she explored a new city, improved her Spanish, and experienced a different way of being a student. Anna will move to Lima as a Fulbright Fellow and create a documentary film about Peruvian women climate leaders. Anna Millie Milstein is from Tokyo, Japan. She specialized in social development and human well-being in Europe and Russia, learned Japanese, Italian, and German, studied abroad in Florence and Berlin, minored in data science, and graduated with distinction. She was an IR peer advisor, a Stanford Daily writer and editor, and worked at the Autodesk Foundation on a Sandhill Philanthropy Fellowship. Most memorable was visiting Pompeii and Capri while studying abroad in Florence. Anna plans to work as an analyst for Redstone Strategy Group in New York City. Annika Mohanpour is from Berkeley, California. She specialized in economic development, world economy and environment, energy and natural resources, learned German and Spanish, studied abroad in Berlin, and minored in psychology and data science. She graduated with IR honors and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She worked for a media strategy consulting company in Berlin and a company in India focused on increasing women's workforce participation. Annika plans to pursue media law. Kamau K. Muse-Morris is from St. Louis, Missouri. He specialized in Africa and economic development world economy, learned Arabic, studied abroad in Cape Town, minored in African and African American studies, and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. He was a Frosh Council member, Appropriation Committee Treasurer of the Associated Students Undergraduate Senate, and an intern at the National Council on U.S.-Arab Relations and the Martin Luther King Jr. Papers Project. Most memorable was experiencing the heart of South African culture and history while in Cape Town. Kamau plans to pursue a PhD in political science. Hunter Musey is from Charleston, South Carolina. He specialized in international security and East and South Asia, studied abroad in Madrid, learned Spanish and Chinese, minored in Spanish, and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. He was social chair of the Society for International Affairs at Stanford, Stanford Model United Nations Conference Secretary General, and a Defense Department intern. Most memorable was making many friends as a Frosh on Zoom. Hunter will complete his coterminal master's in communication and plans to take the Foreign Service Officer test. Lucy Nemirov is from Palo Alto, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being and international history and culture, learned Spanish, and studied abroad in Cape Town. She was a Leventhal tutorial participant and a member of the Stanford Concert Network. Most memorable was living with best friends in Mars. Lucy will complete a coterminal master's in modern thought and literature. Bailey Nicholson is from San Antonio, Texas. She specialized in economic development / world economy and comparative international governance, learned Arabic, and studied abroad in Istanbul and New York. She graduated with IR honors and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was a CSAC research assistant, a Stanford Center for Poverty and Inequality Research Fellow, training director at KZSU, and creative director at Stanford Mint magazine. Most memorable was studying in New York and Istanbul. Bailey plans to apply to graduate school and pursue a career in international economic development. Buddy Norlander is from Oneonta, New York. He specialized in Latin American and Iberian studies and international history and culture, learned Spanish and Portuguese, studied in Santiago, and minored in psychology. He was a member of Stanford in Governance and Stanford Latter-day Saints Student Association and participated in a Stanford Cardinal Quarter. Most memorable was meeting his fiancée on campus. Bailey plans to work in Chicago. Eva Orozco is from Los Angeles, California. They specialized in social development and human well-being and international security, learned Mandarin and Spanish, studied abroad in Santiago, and minored in human rights. They were an emergency medical technician program member, a researcher for H.R. McMaster, and distributor for EC4EC and Stanford Planned Parenthood. Most memorable was being supported by Dr. Rakhov when they first gained academic accommodations. Eva plans to work in government and then pursue law school. Jonathan Pak is from Phoenix, Arizona. He specialized in international security and international history and culture, learned French, studied abroad in Paris, and minored in music. He was a Stanford Medical Orchestra conductor, Schoenberg project director, and Center for Spatial and Textual Analysis intern. Most memorable was studying in Paris because it was his first time in a city besides Phoenix and Stanford. Jonathan plans to pursue law. Aisha Rahman is from Pomona, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being and international history and culture, studied abroad in Madrid and New York, minored in Spanish, and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She was a Stanford and Government Fellow at the Center for Peace Democracy, Stanford King Center in Global Development Researcher, U.S. Senate intern, and Frost 101 TA. Aisha plans to pursue law school. Ria Ida Reddy is from Fremont, California. She specialized in Middle East and Central Asia and international security, learned Persian, minored in Iranian studied, and graduates with IR honors. She interned at the Near East Asia Center for Strategic Studies and the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and was an advisor for the Stanford Global Studies Internship Program. Most memorable were the back-to-back Blackfest and Frosh concerts in her sophomore year. Ria plans to pursue a career in international security and policy with a focus on Iran and eventually attend law school. Dylan Rivera is from Temecula, California. He specialized in Europe and Russian and economic development / world economy, learned French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Russian, studied abroad in Paris, and minored in French. He was the Society for International Affairs at Stanford Financial Officer, an applied medical intern in the Netherlands, and a research assistant for H.R. McMaster. Most memorable was studying in Paris, where he improved his French and explored an amazing city. Dylan plans to spend a few months backpacking through Southeast Asia and then pursue work in international business. Joseph Francis Ruelas is from San Antonio, Texas. He specialized in international history and culture and comparative international governance, learned Spanish and Portuguese, studied abroad in Madrid, and minored in Spanish. He participated in summer research college and played intramural sports. Most memorable was studying in Madrid, where he sharpened his Spanish and traveled to different cities. Joseph interned at the US State Department and then completed a conterminal master's in Iberian and Latin American cultures. George San Miguel is from Bakersfield, California. He specialized in international security and comparative international governance, learned Spanish and Chinese, studied abroad in Santiago, and minored in computer science. He was a researcher with the State Department, an English teacher with Engine, and was involved with Stanford Mariachi. Most memorable was studying in Chile and traveling throughout the country with his cohort. George plans to pursue immigration law. Barbara Sanford is from Aptos, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish and Arabic, studied abroad in Santiago, minored in education and English, and graduated with distinction. She won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, honorable mention for a Hoover's Distinguished Essay Competition, the Capping Ground Leader Award, and a 2024-25 Fulbright grant. She was a Graduate School of Education research assistant, a U.S. Embassy in Tunisia virtual intern, and a U.S. Foreign Service intern at the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs and the U.S. Embassy in Lithuania. Most memorable was excavating a medieval church during an archaeology field school in Bosnia. Barbara will teach English as a Fulbright Fellow in Estonia. Dale Scott Satry is from Brentwood, California. He specialized in economic development / world economy and East and South Asia and learned Italian. He was a research assistant for GSB Professor Daryl Duffy, completed multiple finance internships, and was a Herzog Foundation Fellow. Most memorable was transferring to Stanford during COVID and acclimating to a new environment coming out of the military. Dale plans to work in asset management and hopes to pursue a public office position in the future. Noah Schechter is from Los Angeles, California. He specialized in international security and comparative international governance, learned Spanish, and studied abroad in Santiago. He was the kitchen manager for Hammarskjöld Co-op and the co-creator of Atlos, a platform for large-scale human rights investigations. Noah will complete a coterminal master's in computer science. Emily Colcord Schrader is from Chevy Chase, Maryland. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned Spanish, studied abroad in Cape Town, and received an Alumni Association Award of Excellence. She won a Taub Center for Jewish Studies Essay Prize, published a creative nonfiction piece in Leland Quarterly, and has a history paper coming out in Herodotus. She was a CSAC research assistant and proud member of the campus co-op communities. Most memorable was studying in Cape Town and furthering her research on the development of human rights mechanisms. Emily plans to work at Stanford Center for Human Rights on their Virtual Tribunals initiative. Sean Sluvavich is from Aliso Viejo, California. He specialized in economic development / world economy and international history and culture, learned Chinese, studied abroad in Hong Kong, and minored in East Asian studies. He was on the men's varsity swimming and diving team. Most memorable were grueling nights at Green Library and end-of-quarter nomad celebrations. Sean plans to be a global citizen and advocate for peace. Sonia Stevenson is from Ogden, Utah. She specialized in international security and East and South Asia, learned Korean and German, studied in Berlin and South Korea, and minored in German studies. She received the Stanford J.E. Wallace Stirling Award and graduated with distinction and Phi Beta Kappa. She was a Stanford Next Asia Policy Lab research assistant and vice president and financial officer for the Stanford Polo Club, which is what she remembers most. Sonia plans to work at a political think tank or as a journalist / editor before pursuing graduate school. Arabella Kate Wally is from Brooklyn, New York. She specialized in social development and human well-being and comparative international governance, learned Spanish, German, and Mandarin, studied abroad in Santiago, and minored in human rights. She graduated with interdisciplinary honors in democracy, development, and the rule of law, and with distinction, and won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and the 2024 Gardner Service Fellowship. She was a Cardinal Policy Group co-founder and resident assistant at 680 Lomita. Arabella will work in a government or nonprofit agency as a Gardner Public Service Fellow. Parker Vance Watt is from Thomasville, Georgia. He specialized in Europe and Russia and economic development / world economy, learned Russian, studied abroad in Oxford and Estonia, and minored in Slavic languages and literatures. He graduated with distinction and Phi Beta Kappa and won a 2024-25 Fulbright grant. He was Stanford Equestrian Team Captain, Chi Alpha Christian Fellowship Group Leader, and guitarist, and an active member of Stanford Theater Productions. Most memorable was studying at Oxford. As a Fulbright Fellow, Parker would document through film the cultural identity of Ukrainian refugees in Estonia. Malia Webster specialized in East and South Asia and social development and human well-being. Learned Korean, French, and Spanish, studied abroad in Paris, minored in translation studies and comparative studies in race and ethnicity, and graduated with IR honors and with distinction. She was a Stanford Language Learners Club student leader and received multiple language study grants. Most memorable was experiencing the most beautiful and vibrant student community as a Hammarskjöld resident assistant. Malia plans to pursue South Korean multiculturalism as a Fulbright finalist and then pursue a PhD. Sophia Woodrow is from Atlanta, Georgia. She specialized in social development and human well-being and international history and culture. Learned French, studied abroad at Oxford, and graduated with distinction. She was the Phi Beta Phi chapter president and a Stanford in government member. Most memorable was storming the football field when Stanford defeated Oregon in overtime. Sophia will be a development coordinator of Future Coalition, a young people's nonprofit that resources movement building solutions. Faith May Zafis is from Chicago, Illinois. She specialized in economic development / world economy and international security, learned Mandarin, studied abroad in Florence, and minored in East Asian studies. She was a varsity lightweight rower, a Gordian Knot Defense Innovation and Women in National Security Scholar, and a Fellowship of Christian Athletes Leadership member. Most memorable was witnessing the entrepreneurial resilience and creativity when leading an online refugee startup course in Uganda. Faith plans to complete a co-terminal master's in international policy and continue working with her founding Defense Tech AI startup team. Jessica Zhu is from San Jose, California. She specialized in social development and human well-being, learned French, studied abroad in Paris and Oxford, minored in French and human rights, won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence, and graduated with IR Honors, Distinction, and Phi Beta Kappa. Her honors thesis won the Firestone Medal for Excellence in Undergraduate Research and the Kennedy Prize for Single Best Thesis in the Social Sciences. She was a Stanford Daily Executive Editor, Editor-in-Chief of Embodied, Stanford Undergraduate Research Journal of Feminism, Gender, and Sexuality Studies, and a Kosovo Specialist Chambers legal intern. Most memorable was studying at Oxford with one of her best friends. Jessica will intern with the Indonesian Supreme Court in Jakarta and then attend Stanford Law School. Rachel Zila Hidalgo is from Lima, Peru. She specialized in Latin American and Iberian studies and Europe and Russia. Learned Spanish, German, and Portuguese, along with French and Korean, and studied away in Berlin, Istanbul, and Washington. She won an Alumni Association Award of Excellence and a National Language Honor Society Award. She was a member of Stanford Women in Politics and Hermanas. Most memorable was her Krupp internship in Berlin, where she worked with nonprofits that supported Ukrainian refugees. Rachel will complete a co-terminal master's in Latin American Studies and plans to pursue a career in social impact consulting.
All right. Okay. Whew. All right, one last round of applause for all of our graduates. So in addition to their diploma cover, they've received from IR branded swag, including, I think, a passport case and a luggage tag. And these gifts symbolize our hope that you will go away explore the world, but also come back and visit us here at the farm, where you will always be welcome. So as we close, I just want to thank a few people. I want to thank Dr. Paul Festa, our Associate Director, Stephen Bussa, our Student Services Officer, and Olivia Williams, our Program Associate. They support our students through the IR major in countless ways, and they've also been working tirelessly to put this ceremony together. So thank you very much. So finally, I think it's fitting that our final act of recognition is for all of you out there, parents, relatives, friends, who've supported these students through their education. So on behalf of the IR program, its faculty, its staff, and on behalf of the class of 2024, thank you all and congratulations. And that brings our ceremony to an end. Enjoy the rest of this festive day and happy Father's Day.